Is it my turn? I appreciate you doing this. I really do, and thank you for being here today. I want to just start out with a statement from an article I read. I just want to ask you this, if you agree with this line. China is consistently pursuing a single long-term strategy with the effective control of the entire South China Sea as its ultimate goal.
Yes, I think that is China's objective.
Okay. Just wanted to make clear that, I mean, because at the end of the day, some of these things are covered as some sort of just one-off experiments or explorations. This is, in fact, the pursuit of their 9-line position, that you see it in their passport documents. They claim, for example, we saw today in the Wall Street Journal, I know this was discussed earlier, this U.S. sees new flashpoint in South China Sea dispute. This time it's the Scarborough Shoal, which is only, I believe, 120 nautical miles off the coast of the Philippines, where they've now begun preliminary exploration. I want to talk about human rights. There was a report earlier this week that China's overseas NGO management law is being considered by the National People's Congress, a standing committee. And according to this report, the text is going to require NGOs to register with the Public Security Bureau, including, and I guess, indicating that the Chinese government continues to see foreign NGOs as a potential threat to national security. And then, first of all, has the State Department expressed its concern over this proposed legislation?
Yes, Senator, repeatedly, and indeed at the highest level, starting with Secretary Kerry. I've done it repeatedly. We share exactly that concern. It sends a very bad signal to have NGOs overseen by the Ministry of Public Security. I think you're exactly right.
Well, there's also reports that there's possible carve-outs for academic exchange programs in the new draft, which seem to indicate that some favored non-governmental programs will continue while others are going to face more intense scrutiny. Is the State Department going to seek carve-outs for certain NGOs?
No. What we're seeking to do is to make sure that the entire community of such organizations and institutions, whether they're academic, whether they're not-for-profit, whether they're business associations, whether they're professional associations that are working in China to the benefit, actually, of China and the Chinese, are all treated the same way and treated appropriately.
Can I ask you, why hasn't the President met with any Chinese rights lawyers, activists, religious leaders, feminists, or others who have been harassed and detained and repressed by the Chinese government during what has been a marked deterioration in human rights and rule of law in China on his watch?
Senator, I'd have to go back and check and see the meetings that he's had. I haven't been on those trips. I can tell you that on my most recent trip to China, I'm obviously not the President, I made a point of meeting with lawyers whose colleagues and partners, and indeed in one case, someone in their family.
Well, you're pretty aware of the rights community within China. Are you aware of any meeting the President's ever had with any of them?
I believe he has, but I need to go back and check.
Okay.
And certainly other senior members at the White House, the National Security Advisor, and others have met with members of the rights community.
For some time there's been this conversation regarding the utility of various human rights dialogues and concerns that these dialogues have yielded little in terms of substantive outcomes and have had the unintended consequence of ghettoizing human rights in U.S. foreign policy. So can you share with us any significant deliverables during the course of the Obama administration that have emerged as a result of the U.S.-China human rights dialogue?
Senator, I think it's two things. One, I think it's not either or. It has to be both. In other words, these issues need to be and are raised not simply in the context of a human rights dialogue, but at the highest levels, by the President, by the Secretary of State, by other senior officials. And at the same time, having these dialogues and working groups can be a way to see if we can advance in practical areas. That's the idea. Now, we've seen over the course of time various political prisoners released. Now, that may be in advance of a summit meeting or some other meeting, but we see that. We're looking, though, for systemic change as well as the release of political prisoners. And so it goes to the laws, including the NGO law that you just cited. It goes to across the board the way the Chinese approach this issue. And I think it's a process that just takes a lot of time to see progress. We are doing two things. More than that, but in particular. First, this is something, again, that is on the agenda of every single meeting we have at every level with the Chinese. Second, we're trying to put a spotlight on it internationally. We went to the Human Rights Council in Geneva. We led an effort by more than a dozen countries to show the deep concern that exists across the world about some of China's recent actions in terms of repression of lawyers, civil rights activists, religious leaders, etc. We have our human rights report, as you know, that tries to put a spotlight on. We've given awards to leading members of the rights community to put a spotlight on it. That's very important, too, because at the end of the day, it goes to China's reputation around the world. And that's a reputation that as China engages more and more in the world, it cares more and more about.
Okay, my last question is I've been following the troubling developments in Hong Kong, including the long arm of Beijing's power on display most dramatically with the abduction of the booksellers. So we've also seen shrinking space for press freedom and academic freedom all across China, particularly concerning are the ongoing trials against several of the young pro-democracy activists like Joshua Wong, who was a leader in the Hong Kong umbrella movement of 2014. Has the U.S. consulate sent a representative to observe his trial?
I'm not aware that we have. Let me check and come back to you. We share your concern.
Have you expressed those concerns with, has the State Department expressed concerns with his particular case with the Chinese government?
Absolutely. We're watching it very carefully. We're following the trial. Let me check. I believe we have if we've had an opportunity to do it, but let me come back to you on that. Joshua Wong, Alex Chow, Nathan Law, all of these people.
Well, the last one is the U.S. working with our allies like Sweden to press for the return of bookseller Mr. Min Hai, a naturalized Swedish citizen. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name. Is it Gui Min Hai? And he's a naturalized Swedish citizen. Have we worked with our allies to press for that, for the return?
Yes, and I've raised that myself directly with my counterparts when I've been there. We find the actions that have taken place in Hong Kong to be of deep concern. As you know, Senator, there are basic guarantees that were written in to the Sino-British Joint Declaration, to the Basic Law, and these guarantees go to freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, an independent judiciary, an independent executive and legislative branch. The only thing that's carved out for China in this is foreign policy and defense. And we've seen increasing Chinese encroachments on the rights that are established under the Basic Law. And the booksellers case is an egregious one, including apparently the abduction of people from Hong Kong to mainland China and even the abduction of people from other countries. This is something that we have raised directly with senior Chinese leadership, and it is, I think, raising and ringing alarm bells, not just here in the United States, but around the world. Thank you.